Welcome back to the old Photo Vault channel. The Unclaimed Veil, Père Lachaise Cemetery, Paris, autumn 1907. They went on Sundays because the paths were kept tidy, and the city felt farther away there. Monsieur Delacroix carried flowers he never remembered choosing. His sister-in-law stood apart, her black sleeves careful not to brush the stones. The monument between them wore a pale veil, newly draped, though no one recalled seeing it the week before. Years earlier, a seamstress named Elodie Marchand had been buried without family, her wedding dress unfinished on the table. She was known for returning to places where cloth had been left unclaimed. When the camera clicked, the veil seemed to settle lower, as if warmed by breath. Later, the photograph showed more than 3 figures. The veil had gathered itself into a shape, delicate and patient, leaning toward the man's hands. Delacroix said nothing, but he stopped bringing flowers. He'd begun to find pins in his pockets, bright and sharp, exactly the kind Elodie used. The seat she kept, Santa Clara, California. Late summer, 1974, the photograph was taken after dinner, when the house smelled faintly of dish soap and wilted flowers. Linda Morales sat on the back of the sofa the way she always did, half turned, as if someone had just called her name from the kitchen. She had lived in that apartment for 3 months then, newly married, careful to make herself small in unfamiliar rooms. Years later, when the marriage ended, Linda left everything behind except the photo. The next tenant would learn from neighbors about a young woman who once waited every evening on that sofa, listening for a car that never came back from the freeway. What unsettled Linda was not her own face, but the thin shadow pressed into the upholstery beneath her, darker than the rest, shaped like someone sitting longer than a moment allows. The sofa was sold, the apartment repainted, but Linda still woke some nights certain she hadn't stood up yet, only shifted politely to make room. The left aisle, St. Mary's Chapel, Upper Bavaria. Winter, 1912. The chapel was never locked, so Anna Rader stepped inside to warm her hands before walking home. The candles were already lit, though she was certain no one had passed her on the road. She knelt on the left side, where the floorboards dipped from years of patient wait. Long before Anna, a novice named Clara Weiss had prayed there each dawn, asking for permission to leave the convent and return to her family. The letter granting it arrived after the influenza took her. She was buried without vows completed, without farewells spoken aloud. In the photograph taken that winter, the altar stands clear and formal. What unsettles viewers is the faint figure near the wooden screen, head bowed, hands folded too neatly for light alone. Anna later swore she never saw anyone, yet she avoided the left aisle afterward, saying the space felt occupied, as if someone was still waiting to be dismissed. The Drunken Table, Lyon, France, late autumn 1962. They said the girl had only had 1 glass too many. Laughing as she leaned against the table, her shoes slipped off without ceremony. The photograph caught her mid-sway, head bowed, hair falling like a curtain. No one noticed the tablecloth at the moment the shutter closed. Later, when the image surfaced, the linen appeared disturbed, lifted, twisted, as if caught in the middle of a careful dance. Locals remembered a woman named Camille Arnaud, once a seamstress who played music with her feet beneath cafe tables, spinning cloth for coins. She died there one winter night, unnoticed, folded into the noise. The cloth in the photograph does not hang naturally. It arches and turns beside the girl's knee, shaped like motion paused. The girl swore she felt a tug, light and rhythmic, as though someone had asked her to join. She never drank again. But sometimes, at night, she wakes with the strange certainty that the dance is still waiting for her to stand. The Fourth Dancer, Cleveland, Ohio, January 1961. The record player skipped once, then settled, and the room laughed it off. Helen was already dancing, cigarette lifted like a prop, her dress catching the light. Behind her, the others leaned and swayed, careless in the way people are when they believe the night will remember nothing. No one noticed the blur near the floor until much later. It rises between the dancers, pale and unfinished, shaped like a woman mid-step. Years before, this apartment had belonged to Ruth Calder, who hosted parties every weekend after her husband died overseas. On the night her heart failed, the music kept playing while she collapsed out of frame, unseen, unheard. In the photograph, the shape bends toward Helen, as if matching her rhythm. Helen would later say she felt crowded, as though someone brushed past her again and again. She stopped dancing after that winter, yet she kept the photo, uneasy about what might happen if the fourth dancer were ever left alone. The last shift horse. Lely Mine, Northern France, 1933. They led the horse through the tunnel at the end of every shift, its hooves knowing the boards better than the men did. Etienne Marchal kept a hand on the bridle, gentle because animals remembered fear longer than people. The others waited behind him, lamps dimmed, smoke settling into the low ceiling. Years before, a handler named Lucien Roux had walked this same passage when the collapse came. He was never found. The horse survived, brought up alone, trembling, its harness torn clean through. In the photograph, everything appears ordinary. The men, the tools, the patient animal. Only later did someone notice the thin figure standing where the tunnel bends, pale against the dark, one hand lifted as if to steady the horse's flank. Etienne said nothing, but afterward the horse refused to move unless he walked slightly to the side, making room for someone who could no longer be seen. The figure among the daisies, near Brno, Moravia, spring 1936. Anna Kovajova stood in the field because the light was even there. The daisies forgiving to the camera. She held the flowers low against her coat, freshly cut, their stems still damp. The photograph was meant to be ordinary, proof of a Sunday walk, nothing more. Years before, a farmhand named Joseph Mali had drowned in that same meadow when spring floods turned the ground treacherous. He was found days later among the flowers, standing upright as if he had never fallen. People said he lingered where the field first bloomed, unwilling to lie down again. When the photograph returned, Anna noticed the shape near her knee. A narrow form rising from the grass, too vertical to be shadow, too soft to be plant. She did not remember anyone standing there. Afterward, she avoided the meadow in spring. She married, moved away, and kept the photo folded in a drawer, unsettled not by what appeared, but by how patiently it seemed to wait beside her. The loyal wait? Turin, Italy, autumn, 1972. Giovanni Ferraro sat the way he always did in the evenings. One leg crossed, the lamp turned low to soften the room. The flowers were for his wife's birthday, arranged too carefully, their colors loud against the quiet wallpaper. He agreed to the photograph only because the house felt settled, complete. For 16 years before that night, a small terrier named Nico had slept across Giovanni's knees, warm and insistent, refusing to be moved. When the dog died, Giovanni kept the habit anyway, resting his hand where fur used to rise and fall. When the photo was developed, a pale shape appeared on his lap, rounded, compact, unmistakably animal. The faint suggestion of a face looked upward, patient and familiar. Giovanni said nothing, only stared at the image longer than necessary. After that, he never shifted his legs while sitting. He claimed it was age, stiffness. But guests noticed he still reached down, gently, as if reassuring something that had never truly left. Julian's second posture. London Music Hall District, 1901. The poster promised a marvel, and Julian delivered it nightly. A man who could fold himself into a cat. Spine bowed, eyes sharpened, patience trained into stillness. Applause came quick, then faded, as applause always does. What remained was the costume. Furred, mended, smelling faintly of chalk and sweat. Hung behind the curtain like a second skin. Julian Hale died quietly in a boarding room above the theater. His body discovered curled in sleep, hands drawn inward as if balancing on an invisible ledge. The costume was kept, then photographed years later for a collector's catalog. In the image, the cat's shape sits too convincingly upright, its gaze intent, almost alert. The chair beneath it seems occupied in a way wood should not be. Some say it is clever staging. Others notice how the eyes do not match the mask. They look practiced, waiting for the curtain to rise again. The third woman in the doorway, Epirus, Greece, 1918. They stood as they always did when strangers came. Eleni turned slightly away, her daughter Sophia facing the road, skirts caught mid-fold by the wind. The stone house behind them was old enough to remember other families. The photograph was meant to show resilience, the way women learn to wait. What no one spoke of was Despina, Eleni's sister, who had died of fever the winter before and was buried before the ground had fully softened. She had favored the doorway, leaning there in the evenings, listening to the valley breathe. When the print arrived, there was a face between them, set back in the shadow of the doorframe. Not blurred, not quite solid, watchful. Eleni said it was damage, a trick of cracks and age. Yet afterward, she never stood in the doorway again. She said it felt occupied, as if someone else had already claimed the place where one pauses before leaving. The pattern that stayed. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Christmas morning, 1968. Martha Klein posed beside the tree because the vacuum was new and someone said it would be funny. The ornaments were still swaying slightly, the room warm with pine and coffee. She laughed just before the shutter clicked, smoothing her dress with the back of her hand. The dress had belonged to her sister Ruth, who used to help with Christmas mornings before illness thinned her voice and shortened her visits. Ruth loved bold prints, said they made a room feel less empty. She died the spring before, her clothes folded away without argument. When the photograph came back, there was a darker shape pressed into the pattern at Martha's hip, not quite shadow, not quite stain. It followed the curve of a hand. Martha said it was nothing, fabric, light, a trick of color. Yet she never wore that dress again. She said it felt crowded, as if someone else were already standing there, close enough to be warm. Between the brothers, Bilbao, Spain, 1910. The photograph was commissioned to mark a small success. Two brothers newly employed at the docks. Clean jackets borrowed for the occasion. Mateo stood, shoulders squared, while Iñaki sat with one leg crossed, careful not to scuff his shoes. They held still longer than was comfortable, eyes fixed on the lens. Their sister Rosa had died the previous winter, caught between rooms in the house where drafts lingered. She used to sit exactly there, half hidden behind them during arguments, listening, waiting for someone to notice she was still in the room. When the print arrived, a pale figure appeared between the brothers, softened by the chair's back, her face incomplete, as if memory itself had failed to finish her. Mateo said it was a flaw, a smear of light. Iñaki folded the photograph away and did not argue. Years later, neither brother could recall standing so close. Yet both remembered the same thing. A sudden warmth at their backs, and the sense that someone had finally taken her place among them. The extra guest, Trondheim, Norway, winter 1909. They gathered in the front room because it had the best light. Coats still buttoned, hats kept on for formality. The chair by the door was left empty, as it always was, to balance the arrangement. No one thought twice about it. There were enough of them already. The year before, Aunt Marta had died quietly in that house, her breath thinning while the rest of the family ate supper in the next room. She favored that chair by the door, saying it let her listen to everyone at once. Afterward, the chair was never moved. When the photograph was developed, a figure appeared behind the glass-paneled door. Soft-edged, upright, unmistakably human. The outline matched the height of the empty chair, the tilt of a familiar head. They said it was reflection, winter light, a trick of old film. Still, no one ever sat there again. The family agreed, without speaking, that the place was already taken. The Man Who Was Not Alone. Vienna, Austria, 1924. They said Ernst Keller had a talent for faces, for bending them into whatever the audience needed that night. The photograph was taken backstage after the laughter had thinned and the grease paint had begun to itch. He raised his hands in mock alarm, eyes wide, mouth half pleading, half delighted. No one remembered the boy behind him until later. Ernst had once toured with a younger comic, Paul Weiss, whose timing was poor and whose nerves never settled. Paul fell from a hotel window during their final engagement, an accident no one examined closely. Ernst never spoke his name again. When the print was developed, a small face appeared over Ernst's shoulder, pale and intent, smiling without warmth. Ernst stared at it for a long time. He continued performing, but his expressions sharpened, as if reacting to cues no one else could hear. He told a friend the worst part wasn't being followed. It was being corrected, quietly, constantly, by someone who still wanted the laugh first. The shape she wore. Liverpool, England, spring, 1965. The photograph was taken just before bed, when the house had gone quiet and the radio downstairs hummed through the floorboards. Margaret Ellis sat on the edge of her bed to switch off the lamp, surprised to see the camera lifted behind her. She turned, half smiling, already thinking of sleep. The room still carried traces of her brother Thomas, who had died the year before. His records stacked neatly, his posters left because no one knew where else to put them. As children, he used to stand behind Margaret in the mirror, making faces until she laughed, pressing his shadow into hers. When the photo was developed, a darker figure lay across the back of her nightdress, tall and unmistakably human. Its head aligned too closely with her spine to be coincidence. Margaret said it felt familiar, not frightening. She kept the dress but stopped wearing it. Years later, she admitted the truth quietly. Some nights, just before sleep, she still felt the weight settle behind her, as if Thomas were standing there again, making sure she was not alone. The Keeper Below. Capuchin Catacombs, Palermo, 1978. The guide said the tunnels were closed, but money has always opened doors in Palermo. The photograph was taken quickly, flash flaring against salt-stained walls and stacked coffins. The figure in black stood still, face pale, as if carved from the same stone as the arch behind him. No one remembered inviting him into the frame. Long before tourists came, a lay brother named Salvatore kept the lower chambers. He washed the bones, stitched the shrouds, and slept among the dead so they would not be lonely. When he died, there was no record of burial, only a note that his keys were never found. In the image, the man's hand rests on a bundle that resembles a skull wrapped in cloth, held with care rather than fear. What unsettles viewers is not his presence, but his patience. The coffins lean inward, attentive, and the doorway behind him seems open, as if something has just stepped through and expects to be tended next. The Child at the Door, Hardanger Fjord, Norway, early autumn 1898. They posed because the lake was calm and the roof had just been mended. Ingrid stood barefoot on the stone, apron tied tight, while Anders leaned into the doorway with the tired pride of a man who had fixed what storms kept testing. The camera took its time. No one spoke. Years earlier, a neighbor's child named Ola had wandered down to the water during berry season and never returned. They searched the reeds for days. When the lake finally gave him back, it was near this very shore. Small hands curled as if holding breath. When the photograph was developed, a narrow figure appeared at Anders's leg, pale and upright, too distinct to be fog. It looked up from the doorway's shadow, patient, almost polite. Ingrid said she felt a chill only after, when the door would not stay closed at night. Anders set a bowl of milk by the threshold, just in case. In the mornings, it was always empty. The one who never left. Northumberland, England. Summer, 1904. Mrs. Edith Harrow stood by the rain barrel because it was where she paused each morning, listening to the house wake. The cat waited at her feet, patient, its eyes fixed on the open door behind her. The garden had grown wild that year, vines pressing close to the stone as if drawn by habit. Her husband, Thomas, had died 2 winters earlier, taken by fever before the ivy was cut back. He used to stand beside the window, half hidden by leaves, watching the lane long after there was no one left to return. When the photograph was developed, a pale figure appeared in the vines near the window. Upright, familiar, its face softened as though seen through water. Edith said nothing when she noticed it. She only stopped trimming the ivy after that. Neighbors later said the house always looked occupied, even when the door was shut. The cat never slept indoors again. It sat by the barrel instead, staring toward the window, as if waiting for someone who was still standing there. Some say these are only flaws of light and time. Others believe they are traces of lives that never truly left. What matters is this: once you've seen them, it's hard to look away. If you notice something unusual in these images, tell us in the comments. Do you believe these are ghosts or memories refusing to fade, like the video if it unsettled you? Subscribe for more vintage photos, hiding stories the past tried to keep quiet. And remember, sometimes the camera captures more than we ever intended to see.